Hello and welcome to episode 44 of the Keyboard Chronicles, a podcast for keyboard players of the gigging variety. I'm your host, David Holloway, and it's brilliant to be here with you as always. And I'm joined by one of Adelaide's, South Australia's greatest sons, Paul Bindig. How are you, sir?
I'm great, thank you, David. And as always, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
And we're going to talk about one of Adelaide's other greatest sons in a minute, which is our guest. But before I do, I just wanted to cover a couple of things. Firstly, I've been remiss over the last few shows in not giving shout outs to our sponsors. So we've got a couple of very valued sponsors that help us bring out this podcast. So I'd like to thank 20books.com, an online Australian bookshop. We also have three silver sponsors, the Korg Kronos User Group. Thank you, Greg, who runs a brilliant group there. And I know I've mentioned Greg a few times before. And also the musicplayer.com forums. Both Paul and I are members of those forums and have a ball on there and highly recommend musicplayer.com. So there's links to the websites for each of these in our show notes, either on the website or on the YouTube video description. So thank you, sponsors, for your support. And also you out there that listen and watch us each and every time. We can't thank you enough. And we'd love it if you are watching on YouTube, if you could click on the subscribe button and the little bell so you get a notification each time we release a new episode. Now, as far as giving love back to people that support us, Paul, we've got a bit of an idea. Tell us about our little scheme around T-shirts.
Yeah, so I don't know. Again, for those who are watching us, I don't know if it's become apparent, but I'm wearing a band T-shirt. Now, this is actually my party band, Fingerbun, but I'm not that interested in pimping my own party band on the podcast. And David, as you can see, is wearing a Midnight Oil.
And sadly, I'm not a
T-shirt.
member. I'm definitely not a member, sadly.
Well, only because they haven't asked you yet. I'm sure that invitation is coming around really soon. So today we thought we'd wear band T-shirts, which is a bit of fun. But what we want to do is this. If you are listening to this podcast or watching it and you would like us to pimp your band on the show, all we ask is that you send us a T-shirt and we will wear it on the podcast. So I'd much rather wear your T-shirt than mine. And you might be saying, hey, Paul, is this just a way of scamming a few free T-shirts? Yeah, it probably is. But in addition to that, let's promote. And what we'll do, if you send us a T-shirt through each to wear, we'll give you band. Tell us, write a couple of paragraphs about your band. We'll tell the listeners about it. Doesn't matter what the band is. Doesn't matter what you do. We don't mind as long as there's no really rude or offensive words on the T-shirt. I think we'll be happy with that. What sort of shirt sizes should we be asking for, David?
Oh, come on, Paul, that's cruel.
Is that
I'll do the fat one first then. A 2XL, please.
And I'm a small or a medium, so
look at that.
Either of those would be good. I'm only a scrawny little bloke.
Just
but yeah,
hope I never fall on you, Paul.
And then, to be fair, David is a very tall man too, so it's not apparent on this screen here. But how tall are you, David?
6'3" or 190 centimeters.
So he's a tall lad. So it's, not a fat bloke.
No, that was wide. Sorry, that was wide. Yeah. You want my height? Did you say so?
A big strapping man. But yeah, look, we'd love to promote your band. So yeah, send us through the shirts. We'll happily say a few words. Let us know about what you're up to, and that way the listeners who aren't, because we appreciate some people just like to listen while they're driving in the car. They'll get a bit of info about what you do as well. Why not? A little bit of fun, and
And a little commitment I can give to those that are wondering if this is just a scam to get more T-shirts. As Paul said, look, we're always up for more T-shirts, but we will wear them on one show. And I do have some contacts with a local homeless organisation that are always after good quality clothing, including things like T-shirts and stuff like that. So I'll happily wash and donate good quality T-shirts that go to a better cause.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you, I'm not sure about your wife, David, but if you knew mine, the last thing she wants is me to start collecting thousands of more band T-shirts because I've got plenty. But no, it's really just let's just help each other out a bit. So we'd love to promote you and your band and what you do. And the podcast is going from strength to strength, and the listenership continues to stagger us every week. We're humbled by that. So enough said about that. Thanks, Dave.
Much appreciated. And for those that can't be bothered listening at the end, the best way to contact us is editor@keyboardchronicles.com, or even if you just DM us on the Facebook page, the Keyboard Chronicles, that'd be great, and we can work something out. So it's then great to introduce our guest for this episode, Mr. Dave Ross. So for those of you that have been browsing YouTube over the past 3 years, and if you like Paul and I, you love watching a good cover band video, you would have been hard pushed to have missed Hindley Street Country Club, or HSCC for short. Now, we'll talk lots more about HSCC with Dave, but Paul, I reckon it'd be arguable they'd be the most well-known cover band in the world, aside from the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, well, I won't go there with the Rolling Stones. I'll leave you one out on that one. But I actually would say they probably are the most well-known cover band in the world by virtue of the literally millions of views they get on their incredibly high-quality covers.
And what I would suggest is if you haven't heard of Hindley Street Country Club, before you listen to this interview, just jump on YouTube and look them up. And there'll be a link in the show notes to their YouTube channel. Just watch 2 or 3 of their songs, or even one of their songs, to get a feel for what we're about to talk about, because the quality is huge and you can see why they've got the success that they have. So, like Paul, HSCC are Adelaide-based, and so we caught up with Dave to cover off his career and the more recent rocket ride that he's been on with Hindley Street Country Club. So enjoy. Dave, a huge thanks for joining us, and it's actually a bit of a novelty to have all 3 of the participants on the call in relatively the same time zone.
That's great, isn't it? Yeah, I often hear you guys, calling it at 6 a.m. somewhere for one of you or somebody in America or whatever it is.
That's right. No, great to have you. And as we've explained in the intro, we're really pleased to have you on, and you've obviously had a hell of a ride the last couple of years, and we're going to talk lots about that. But I just wanted to kick off, if I could, about just your early years, Dave Ross, the early years. What got you into music? How did you learn your chops and kick things off?
Yeah, well, so I guess it all, back where it started with my parents were both musicians, and so I was surrounded by music growing up. My dad was they actually met on the QE2. Dad was a band leader. Mum was in one of the floor shows, and hence that just carried on to me loving music and being around all the things that happened. And early years, I loved the piano. Dad had a baby grand. I just loved playing on that. And also I was right into drums, which I still love the drums, but keyboard's kind of like where it went in the end. Went through, started, but from early years had a real interest in production. I love production. And so my formative years, 13 years old, I started working at a local recording studio. I was listening to all the records that are around, listening to all the bands coming through. Obviously at that stage, working in a recording studio was getting the coffee, getting the tapes, because we were, learning how to splice tape and all those kind of things. But at the same time, getting to play on these really cool, synths of back in the day. We're talking about, it's the keyboard players thing. So remember, the Korg Trident, the Jupiter 8, the Simmons drum kits came in and everything. So at a young age, I had a real hands-on on that. That's what started me off, and I haven't really stopped since then. And that was back in England. When I was 15, my dad decided that it's time to make a change to the family. My mum was born in Australia, and so we emigrated out here to Australia and never looked back, really. That's where it all started. That's where it all started.
Yeah, so it sounds like even by age 15, you already had a decent hands-on experience with keyboards.
Yeah, I was really lucky in that respect, and all of that, and just really loved the whole analog thing at that time, and sound. Like I said, sound was, and as it is today, the sounds are just as important as what you play, and I think that that can make the real difference between players that get noticed and players that don't, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Sometimes I think the sounds are even more important occasionally, depending on the task and the job. So Dave, as a 15-year-old being dislocated from the UK and coming to Australia, how did that play into obviously your musical passion and your aspirations? Did you find it easy to sort of pick things up as a teen here, and then how did that progress into young adulthood and the start of your career?
I think so. I was the kind of kid, it really didn't bother me, because I was the kid who, pre coming out here, I would just, every minute of the day, I would be in the music room, which, at the time at our house, which had the piano, had some kind of electric piano my dad had, and a bass guitar. So I taught myself bass as well, and hence guitar from there. So coming out here, it didn't really bother me. I didn't miss too many friends, and I just I came in. I went into went straight into high school here in South Australia. I have a special interest music school. I went to a school that was Fremont High School out north.
Yes. Yep.
That doesn't exist anymore. But the special interest program still does. And so there, I was in every single band. There's concert band, jazz band, the choir, anything that was happening there, I was into it. But it was always, I was always into the, more pop than the classical. They really pushed the classical side of things. Mm-hmm. I was much the pop side of things, and so at that stage, bring out some kind of lead sheet, and I'd be backing all the kids who wanted to sing solo songs, because I just off the bat, here we go, let's go. And that was good. They gave me some more theory than I had. I'd already done organ lessons and drum lessons and piano lessons and all of those things. And I continued to do that until I left school, and basically went straight into, I've done it, I did a bit of duo work around the stuff, a few bands. When I was in school, I was in 2 or 3 bands doing different things. But then age of 18, I got offered to go away. I think that was up to Alice Springs, playing 5 nights a week with a guy who was already established in the industry in Adelaide. He had a gig up there, and he had a keyboard player. And that was the time when, duos were quite big, heavily sequenced stuff. So I got right into that, and we went, supposed to go for 6 weeks. We ended up going to that one venue. We ended up being that one venue for 3 months, and then another venue we ended up being there 8.5 months the first time I went away, 5 months. So that, and for anybody who's out there being a keyboard player or any instrumentalist, and I know that, in some kinds of scenes, there's a thing in the original scene, I don't want to go and play covers, but it doesn't, going and play covers 5 nights a week for what ended up being, I did that for probably played 5 gigs a week for at least 10 years in different bands going through. Initially that was just duos, but then 5 years later it was a trio that turned into a band called Radio Gaga, which was in the the mid-90s, was playing just about every gig, cover gig and corporate gig existed, and we'd spend Australian winter in Adelaide, and then summer in Adelaide, and winter we would end up in Queensland or whatever. But it was cushy touring. It wasn't one-nighters. It was go play in a casino 5 nights a week or a resort, something like that. But again, just playing, all those things, they just give you some really good grounding on. You end up, at the end of that, you end up not overplaying, which a lot of guys that don't have those gigs behind, they end up overplaying, playing too much. You just play the parts you need to, and that's it. And to this day, that's the most important thing. Find the pocket, play the pocket, and just play what you need to with some decent sounds.
Yep.
And not try and do too much, because I went from, I did that band thing there until about probably 10 years ago. In the live thing, then I took a bit of a break from doing that, because I'd just done it for 25 years. And amongst that, so that, that's the playing the gigs every week, but then amongst that there was lots of other stuff going on as well. So did a lot of production for radio, because I was so much into the sequencing side of things. I had it really down pat, using sequencing with a live band, but not letting the sequencing take over. Doing as much as you can live, but using the sequence to just give you all those production elements that people are used to hearing when they hear those songs, because they're produced. From the 80s onwards, everything was so produced. It's just not really possible to produce all those sounds live with a small outfit. And you had a small outfit because you wanted to be able to make some bucks.
That's right. Yeah.
4-piece band is about as far as you could go. Bass, drums, guitar, and I played keys and sang. I was the lead singer with the headset and the guitar. So I could be the front man and do all of those things. But but use the technology to just enhance, but not take over. Never recorded backing vocals. It was always percussion. It was always in control of the effects on the vocals, the effects on the guitars, and all that kind of stuff.
So, Dave, let's dig into that a little bit more. To use a very obvious Beatles analogy, you had your Hamburg moment there in Alice Springs, where you spent months playing covers and was really a baptism by fire, then spent, by the sound of it, a lot of years after that doing lots of it. What were the big learnings for you, and what were some of the highlights of either bands you played in or people you supported?
I would say that's another thing. So over the years doing those tourings and stuff, there was lots of moments where you played with different guys who are touring through. They might get up and sing a song, whatever. But when I stopped doing all of those covers gigs and I gave myself a bit of a break, I then was getting calls to do more one-off things. There was a couple of bands here in Adelaide that Adelaide's a destination for a lot of the acts that go around, especially the older acts, who would they would pick up a band in South Australia when they came through. So they might come for the weekend, and you go and do 3 or 4 days with them over the weekend. You would get the list of songs. You do 1 or 2 rehearsals with the band without the act. The acts would turn up on the Friday, the Thursday or the Friday. You'd have a run through, maybe at sound check, you'd top and tail stuff, and then you go and do 4 shows. And so there's a range of acts that happen with. Some big guys like Russell Morris, Wendy Matthews, Jim Keys, Swanee too. So Swanee was in town for he lived in Adelaide for a couple of years, so I played in his band for a couple of years. And then there was one-off shows. There might be some an Easter appeal or something like that, and so we do think there might Joe Camilleri or Kate Sobrano or acts like that would come through, and they'd only get up and do 1 or 2 acts, but so the band would be there to back all these people up. So yeah, that you know, that they're always fun moments, because they're always you know, you might have had a couple of rehearsals and then you're thrown in, and sometimes the act will turn up and go, oh, that's great, but that's not how I want to play the song. So their management might have said oh yeah, just play them like the originals, and the act will turn up and go, no, I want you to play them like my band does now. And so there'd be a lot of scurrying to get the phones to listen to latest recordings of their band in Sydney or whatever playing the song, to go, okay, we'll do it like that, no worries. So and you can only do that if you've played lots of songs and lots of tunes and head around stuff. But that's always fun. Yeah.
Yeah, and for the benefit of our listeners and our viewers who are not Australian, some of the names that Dave mentioned there are absolute Australian music royalty. So he's played with some of the biggest names going around. Dave, I wanted to ask you about a question specifically related to this, and I'm really interested in your process. So I watched you play in a very, very high-end Prince tribute act that came to Adelaide. It's been to Adelaide a couple of times.
Oh, man.
Yeah, well, well, again, for the benefit of our listeners and viewers, this really, really good, very high quality, very accurate Prince tribute came to play at one of the bigger music venues in Adelaide. And Dave and I, as we discussed in the intro, Dave and I live in the same town. And so I just went along to this gig to watch the band. And what I didn't realise was that you were not a regular member of the band. And the only reason I knew this was because the lead singer announced this fact and said, look, our regular keyboard player couldn't make it for, I think he was ill or so, I can't remember the reason. Yeah, and he just acknowledged you and said, hey, and we got Dave Ross and we really appreciate him for stepping in. Now, if he hadn't said that, I would have had no clue that this is what was going on. And after he said it, I was really watching you very closely just to see, how's he going here? And apart from the odd sideways glance at the bass player and stuff, like no one would have known that you weren't a regular member of the band. So I'm interested in, how did that come about? And I think for the benefit of all of us who love keyboards and play keyboards, what's the process you go through? Because Prince is super, super keyboard heavy. You can't be getting that stuff wrong. And you certainly did it. And as you said earlier, it sounded exactly as it should too. So how did that come about? And what did you do to make sure you delivered that high level, that high standard on the night for the band?
Look, I do have a bit of a process. And like I said to you, when, like I said to you before, that the sounds are just as important as what you're playing. So how that gig happened is a mate of mine. Well, it's actually Con, who's actually the bass player from HSCC, which we'll talk about. He gave me a call and went, "Hey, Dave, what are you doing on Friday night? This is, I think it was Tuesday." Tuesday. Now, it doesn't hurt that I'm a huge Prince fan. He's the guy for me. Just love what he does. So he's saying, "What are you doing?" Andrew Sill's coming and he can't bring his keyboard player. Can you do it? I'm like, okay, sure. So, I get an email, list of songs, decent list of, I can't remember this, I'm guessing a couple of sets, so maybe 25 songs or something. And in reality, I probably played half a dozen, maybe doodled around on another 6 or something, as you do. But I probably only had sounds for 2 of the songs on my current keyboard setup that I was using. That was a big process. So I listened to the song, like when I do any song, I have a process and it's just got to happen. I listen through the song, write down as I listen through what sounds I need to find. Then I'll go through Let's go to the first sound. Yep. Just cycle through sounds which I think are going to be close. And with print stuff, quite often it might be two different sounds coming together to make one sound. And so go through, there might be a half a dozen sounds put together. And often I'll do depending on the song, quite often I'll actually score it, the different parts. And on my score, depending on the part, I'll have different coloured notes for the different sounds. And I might have, for instance, the first sound might be a string sound. For some reason, I always mark my string sounds green, and next to it in text will say T2 string, and that T2 means top keyboard, second octave. That's what you're playing there. And then another bit where stab B4 red, that's probably a synth stab down on B4. When there's a lot going on, I would probably go through and do that map. Sometimes it's for that show, it was fairly rushed, so there was a lot of in brackets sim, play similar kind of things. But that it was just find the sounds, think about logically where your hands need to go, what two sounds are going at the same time, and how I would split them across the keyboard. And sometimes I do it and it's wrong, and I have to rejig where the sounds are. Mm-hmm. But yeah, initially it's go through, find the sounds, put them in a place you can use them, and then think about, it's not just dialing up the sound. Okay, where does that sit in the audio spectrum? How forward will it be in the mix? How does it need to be wide? If it's a string patch, quite often they need to be wide. If you've got a piano patch that's comping, if you just pull it out and as it comes out of the program, it's probably going to have far too many mids in it to not leave room for the vocal. If it's too loud to leave room for the vocal, the engineer is going to turn it down because it's too loud. If you have that sound, so it's got all the key parts of the sound there, but not too heavily in the mids, the sound will be brought up and it'll sit nicely with the vocal. Those kind of things. So and those kind of things happen, and I do a lot of that with HSCC as well. So the process is, I'll get the sounds, I'll do my map, then I'll move on to the next song. I won't even play the song necessarily. I've played all the parts as I've been going along, but I will then, I've put all the sounds together, I've made my roadmap, I'll move on to the next song. And so that took quite a while to do the Prince thing. And then the actual running through of songs and actually playing the sounds, I doubt that I played one of those songs all the way through. Yeah. But I had my map that told me what I had to play where. And I just had to make sure that the two parts that were going at the same time, I could actually do at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's a great process, Dave. And I love the T2 thing. I wish I'd thought of that before. I love because I'm always getting, which octave am I playing this in again? I love that.
Yes, that's the killer. And the thing is you do that, but then if I've got to play that song in a year's time, I need to come back to that roadmap and go, can I read this? Yes, I can. So then I can just turn my keyboards on, look at the sheet, and go, yeah, bang, there it is. It's a really useful way to do things, and color code. So that's the beauty of today with manuscript. And I just use a free scoring program called MuseScore, and it's I get on with it really well. Doesn't have some features of the more expensive programs, but it does exactly what I need it to do.
Great. No, excellent. And so, Dave, you mentioned yourself that this sort of applies to the Hindley Street Country Club. So let's start talking a little bit about that. So we have briefly mentioned what HSCC is in the introduction, but just in your words, you know, give it a little bit of an overview of the band.
Okay, so it was really started as a bit of an outlet, just to. The idea is just a collective of players doing songs that we like. So the Hindley Street Country Club, so for those viewers, anybody out of Adelaide, Hindley Street is kind of like, for Sydney people, it's the King's Cross of Adelaide. It's the main strip where all the main clubs and pubs and strip clubs and all of that, it's where it all happened. So the Hindley Street Country Club is like, you know, this is where all these guys who were, you know, back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, were playing on the street. You know, we could, there was times when we would do 7 or 8 shows a week on the street in different places. So it's a bit of tongue-in-cheek going, oh, this is where we are now kind of thing. And it's never been a set group of people like that. It's not, he's the drummer, he's the guitarist, he's this. There's it's basically it would start off there's 2 guys. One is the bass player who I worked with a lot, which is Con, and he's kind of the he's the guy who picks the tunes, picks the players, and would pick what kind of tempo we're going to play, and he would pick singing to the suit song, guitar to suit song, and the other guy who started was the guy who had the studio and played keys on a lot of original stuff, and so and as it went through, he would just invite different people to come and do sessions. Early on, I didn't do all of the sessions. I do sessions now and then, but at the same time, I was actually working with the bass player, Con. I was actually working, doing playing in bands with him. He's actually had a band in Adelaide for 30 plus years called Reggae On, which, as the name suggests, we play reggae, which is a really cool. If you want to find a band to find the pocket, that's a great band to play. But the whole Hindley Street thing was let's just do some songs, bring some players in, and release some stuff. And it was just a bit of fun. We went, you know, release a song every Friday, and you know, initially, you know, I was on Facebook. Oh, you get a few thousand views, and then, you know. It would build and build, and then we got 20,000 views on this song this week. That's awesome, you know. And then YouTube started to pick up a little bit, and then kind of a year. So every week religiously a song was released, and they're all covers. So they're all those tunes that people our age, let's say 40 to 60 for a, I'm going to cut a fairly wide net there for those generations, and they're just songs that you grew up with and loved. And a lot of the songs when we release them, people go, I remember when this song was released. I remember I was in high school, or I got my, you know, on my first date, or this. So they really invoke some memories in people and have a feel good about it. So, you know, releasing song every year, and kind of, you know, probably the 4th year now. So religiously every week, and it's built and built, and about 2.5 years ago, it just started to go. And it went very quickly to 100,000 to 200,000 last I think last November or something like that, we hit 100 million views on YouTube. And we've just recently hit 200 million. So 200 million views on YouTube. And we've got 500,000 subscribers to the channel. So we'll release a song on a Friday, and it's not unusual for us to hit 100,000 views in the first day, in the first 24 hours. But we still do what we've always done, which is people comment, people ask questions, and always comment back. And that's what was a big thing from the early days, was when people commented great stuff, we go, oh, thank you so much, because you got to connect with the people who are into it. And look, it might be 1% that actually comment, but it's still important, those people. So we just did a concert last Friday at the Palms Casino, which was sold out last Friday and had been for a few months. And a lot of those people there are people who would comment on the videos, and there's actually a Hindley Street Country Club fan page, and they all talk on the fan page, oh yeah, we're going to see it at the concert, da da da. And so when we're there's a lot of people there feel like they know us, and they'll come up and say, oh, I'm Tony. It's like, oh yeah, it's Tony, I've spoken to you on the on YouTube, on the comments and all that. And they love it, but it's all about these tunes that people relate to.
Yeah, but Dave, I'm going to challenge you on that. It absolutely is an absolutely critical component, but I'd argue it has to be about the quality as well, because there are lots of cover bands out there. There are lots of people doing stuff on YouTube. I'd argue, and I said this in the introduction, only partially as a joke, you're probably the best known cover band besides the Rolling Stones. So, you can argue they're pretty much a cover band nowadays. Like, it's about the quality of the production. I mean, I'm sure no one's thinking that 100% of what you hear on the video is what you've played live. Quite rightly, there is a little bit of post-production. I think in the early days, Darren even did some video, I think, on that.
So everything you hear was played live.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's recorded live. Video and audio is recorded multi-track. And yeah, absolutely, it's a mix on the multi-track.
Yeah.
But you've got what you're given, and so you have to deal with that for when you're mixing. And since May last year, I've been doing all the mixing on the tracks. So week in, week out. Mixing that track, pulling it together, what worked, dealing with, that tom mic went down, or there's a lot of bleed in that mic, and some people have commented about it. Yeah, so bleed, don't call it bleed, call it ambience. And how can you use it? You've got to be really careful on how much compression you use, because it's just going to bring up all that background noise that's there. And a lot of the times the mics are placed and not necessarily, there might be, so some of my favourite drum sounds that I've done on these mixes have been where the two guitar amps have picked up the bottom end of the kick drum, and they're on either side, and they've created some really nice ambience. So I'm getting ambience of the kick drum and the bottom end of the drum kit from the guitar mics, and not trying to shy away from that and get rid of it, but actually utilise it because it sounds good.
And I think that's where the quality is, Dave. And that's sorry, and I didn't want you to think. I was thinking you'd you drop stuff in after the fact. It's absolutely about the quality of the live playing and then the work you put into it to get a great mix, and it really, really shows. And so, I mean, that has to play a part, aside from the great song choice, in the success of HSCC.
Yeah, look, it's like anything. So the guys who get the calls to do it learn the songs. It's like a rehearsal. If you go to a band rehearsal, don't go to a band rehearsal think you're going to learn the song at rehearsal. Learn your parts, know your stuff, turn up, and then rehearsals are HSCC rehearsals are real easy because everybody turns up and knows what they're doing. And so we're just tweaking. We're not going, can we just run through the solo section so I can practice my solo guitar? No. Rock up, know your stuff, and what you'll notice on the videos is don't overplay. Play your part, sit in your pocket. Wouldn't your turn to shine? Absolutely. But otherwise, there's so many elements, and I'm not sure that people realise how much rehearsal does not go into these videos. So we literally will turn up. We've been told what the song is, key. We'll turn up, and it might be, we're going to do, a fairly verbatim, and we'll do some substitutions, make a change here. We'll do these chords for the sax solo or whatever we're going to bring in. Or it may be, we're going to completely rework this, different tempo, different feel. Actually, no, I don't want a piano, play a clav. Can you play something more grungy on the guitar? All of that happens within probably half an hour. And then, there might be a little vocal rehearsal if there's some BVs involved, which probably might account for 5 to 10 minutes. And then might run through a few different changes, and then we will start recording. And so it's not, and then we might do 3 or 4 takes. We'll end up with 2 or 3 whole takes. There might be a take where something goes wrong, or I forgot the words, or whatever it is. But there's not a huge amount of those. But from yay to go, from when we're ready, and all of the gear is set up, and we actually start the process from the start to actually we've got recording in the can is probably hour and a half, maybe less.
Wow. I'm getting a bit spooked, Dave, how you're preempting my questions, because I'm about to ask you end to end, what's the time? So that's amazing.
Yeah, hour and a half. That's what we aim for. So we'll go and do 2 songs. We might rock up for 5. It might rock up 5:30, set our gear up, and it probably takes by the time everybody's set up and all the tech stuff, all the lines are run, checked, and it's probably 6:30. If we haven't done 2 songs by 9:30, there's something seriously wrong.
So Dave, I saw HSCC's second ever live show at the German Club in Adelaide.
Yeah.
And that show only happened because the first one sold out in a nanosecond. So a second one was put on, and at that stage, I assume the band as a collective was still deciding what live shows and touring was going to look like. Mm-hmm. Now I see you're running all around the country with various shows booked, and as you mentioned before, selling incredibly well. And again, for the benefit of our listeners and viewers, touring around Australia is not easy. It's very hard because you've got a low population base and you've got major centres separated by thousands of kilometres. So I'm really interested in how obviously it's going well in terms of people are very excited to see your shows and they're selling fantastically. But how's the process of touring been going, and How do you see that developing in the future for the band?
Oh, look, I think live is, ideally live is where it's at for us. The YouTube, it was a vehicle to allow us to tour and play live.
Yep.
Because as musicians, that's what we want to do. And it's great doing the studio stuff, and I've done studio stuff all my life, and ran studios and production houses and stuff, and I love that sort of thing. But there's nothing like playing in front of the crowd. We just went to Melbourne, and we took. And again, if you haven't seen Hindley Street Country Club, again, this is not, it doesn't have one lead singer and a set thing. We've got on tour to Melbourne, we took 3 female singers and 2 male singers, plus that's plus band members sing as well. So. When people look at the video Hindley Street Country Club, and if you've done this, you'll understand. We talk about people going down the rabbit hole because they'll see one video of some guy singing a Yes song, doing a John Anderson, and then they'll see next video will be a Barbra Streisand song, or Kiss song, or it's Doobie Brothers, but they're all different singers singing these songs. So live, we try and, you can only take so many people with you.
Of course.
And so live will take 3, depending on, people's availability. We just took 3 and 2. Sometimes we'll take 3 guys. But then we've got drums, bass, myself on keys, and we'll have a second keyboard player as well. And if you watch the videos, you'll see that predominantly the other keyboard player will play all the piano parts, and all of the production elements, all of the orchestrations, all of the samples, all the bits that go around it. Because again, that's kind of my thing, the production side. I love it. And do that, and with a guitarist. And then we have a percussion player and a sax player. So that's kind of once you do. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Around, and I think so doing the Floyd thing, I'm not sure how many guys you've got on stage for that. Can't be 4.
Correct. Yeah. Look, we confront the same challenge that you guys do, in the sense that you can't always take every single person to every show for various reasons of logistics. But we need to have a minimum of 6 people on stage to recreate the music properly. And look, can I just say this to all of our listeners and viewers who are lucky enough to be in a position where you can watch Hindley Street Country Club live? I encourage you to do it, because they are just as good live as they are on YouTube. And we all know, hearing music live, nothing is better than it. So grab those tickets when they're coming to a city near you. You won't be disappointed, I can promise you.
Yeah, it's great stuff. And look, it's just stuff that people get up. Oh, I love this song. They'll get up, start dancing, singing along, and we encourage that. That's what we want. We want people to enjoy it. And there's just bang, bang. I don't think you could go to a concert or watch the videos even and get bored, because there's no samey. If you had the one guy, your friend will go, oh, you got to see this new band, and you go and watch this video and you think, oh, what a great band, love it, love the singer. You get 3 or 4 songs in, you go, yeah, it's good, but it's all samey. With HSCC, you kind of go down a rabbit hole where you can go a dozen songs in and haven't seen the same lead singer on.
Agree. It's the variety is what makes it so cool, and the styles are so different too. But it's all really great music. So it's a great experience.
And it sounds like the momentum's well and truly there, Dave. And so where do you see HSCC in 3 years or so? I mean, you're already selling out decent-sized theatre shows. I mean, do you have any aspirations of going overseas and stuff like that?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And there's lots of there's been lots of contact from overseas to us about touring. But, you know, with anything like that, you've got to separate the wheat from the chaff, you know, because it's all very well, oh, you should come to our country and play for us. It's like, yeah, that'd be great. Now, have you thought about the costs involved? But there are some real opportunities coming our way for us to tour overseas, and it'll be great to see them actually play out. And look, we actually had stuff on the cards 2 years ago, before COVID came, before we got anywhere near 100 million views on YouTube. We had overseas interest. So now that COVID is calming down a little bit, and as restrictions ease around the world, we can, it'll happen. I'd be really surprised if we're not overseas in some kind of way the next year.
Yeah,
whether it's short, longer term. Yeah,
and obviously a lot of our viewers and listeners are cover band keyboard players themselves, and if you do go and have a look at Hindley Street Country Club's ticket sales, for example, and you may think this is insane, but we are in a very different era now where high quality cover bands have as much momentum in some cases as original bands, if not more, as far as drawing crowds. I mean, you guys are charging $80, $100 a ticket, which 10 years ago people would have gone, that's insane. It's not doable. Yeah. But the size of your production, the amount of people, the logistics of what you need to do, it's a legitimate cost, and people are very happy to pay it.
Absolutely. Yeah, you take a dozen people across the country. You got to, fly them, pay them to do the gig. You've got to accommodate them, feed them, all of that stuff. But that pales in comparison of the cost for production and security, APRA costs, and all of those things. You could buy a new car for what money is spent before a concert even gets on. Before you even leave, you can buy a new car.
That's exactly right. And speaking of huge expenses, Dave, I want to segue to your rig. So one thing that's struck me is you're obviously a Kronos man. You're a Korg man, like my esteemed colleague Paul here, who's a big Korg fan as well. Tell us about your rig. What you love about it, why you've stuck so consistently with particular boards, and so on.
Yeah. So yes, Kronos, absolutely. I've been a Korg man all my life. So I think. The first one, a cover band, so the M1 was it at the time. And at that time I used to traipse around the country, an M1, a Roland Jax 3P, a Mirage sampler, HR16 Elisa's drum machine, and I'm sure there was something else, all this big bulky stuff. These days, the Kronos is just a monster, absolute monster. I can do anything I need to with it. I can get any sounds, and would it be nice to have an actual Rhodes? Yes. Would it be nice to have an actual clavinet? Absolutely. Would it be nice to have a Hammond? God, yes. But it's not realistic. And for the reality is that sound to fit in to the whole spectrum of what we're doing, we just need something that's consistent, repeatable every time, and the Kronos does it. It covers all of that. I can load all of my years of samples into it, and I've got a few for those Kronos guys out there. I've got a couple of VXIs, but you know, there's not too much going on. It's about but using the tool that you've got. It's so capable of doing many things. There's not a tune that I haven't been able to get out of it. On a few tracks, I've spent a bit of time getting the vocoder to work for me as well. I'll stick a vocoder in any time I get a chance. I love it. Yeah.
That's cool. And so a question without notice, and one I hadn't planned on asking, was the Kronos replacement. The rumours are growing that something's going to be announced this year, early next year. Is it? Would you make the jump early, or you'd probably tend to hang back and wait a while?
Look, and I guess everybody can relate to this. That will completely depend on, can I load my Kronos? Can I just take my sounds, my combis, everything that I've done so far, can I drop that into the new machine? That'll make the difference, because that's the thing when you went from M1 to O1W, T3, you know, all the way through to Oasis. You know, nothing was interchangeable. You'd have to start again from scratch. And so for a guy like me, I held it for years. I've got a Korg Triton Extreme, which I'm just now phasing out. I actually believe the Korg Triton Extreme was the best Triton that they released. For those who know about the Korg Tritons, all of those extra cards, most of them were already built into the machine, and it had a bit of a novelty maybe, but had a valve that you could actually use as a insert effect or over your whole mix, so you could do all sorts of different stuff with it. But I stuck with, and before that, I stuck with my M1 and Wave Station for a very long time, because I just put so many hours of work into it to then finally go, okay, I'm going to go to the Korg Triton. And now the Kronos, I can't just take that stuff I had on the Triton, I have to recreate it now. And as you would hear from what I was talking about before, it's not just about going, you know, find a piano patch, yet, find a string patch, yet. It's that patch that you made and all the effects and all the EQ that made it sit exactly where you wanted to sonically. You have to be able to do that, and that's a lot of work. So that's the long answer to a very, very short thing is, if I can transfer my Kronos stuff, like the Nautilus came out, which is a bit of a baby to the Kronos, and they brought it out without Karma and without Aftertouch. I don't know why the Aftertouch thing, it seems such a strange thing to leave out in this day and age. But initially, you couldn't load your Kronos patches. I think they've just done an update now. You can upload your Kronos patches into it. But yeah, that's the thing that's going to be. And the other thing is going to be, it's going to have a big jump to make it worthwhile. Because right now, you know, what can't I do with my Kronos? And that's a serious question. I've never run out of polyphony, because everything I do is live. And typically, you know, with a lot of stuff we do, I'm running, you know, 6 or 7 splits with effects and EQs and everything everywhere. But I guess because I'm not using any sequencing and it's just what my hands can play, I guess that's why I haven't run out of polyphony in that sense.
Dave, I know you mentioned that briefly. So just to confirm, even with your live stuff and the complexity of what you're doing, you're not even having some supplementary backing stuff on top of all the live stuff. You're 100% live when you play.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I actually went, it's funny, I went from being the go-to guy for sequencing around town, like I was known as the guy who, you know, had his sequences like, you know, I went from that guy, again, not letting the technology take over, but it was, you know, that made it all happen. I took a little break, and I don't think I might have had a break for three years. I might have played just a few gigs. I started a family. Your priorities change. You start a family. There's new things happening there. But I just had that itch to go and play again, and so. But you got to understand, I played 5, 6, 7 gigs a week for 25 years. So I thought I deserved a bit of a break at that stage. But when I came back, I don't think I've done any sequence stuff. I might have done 1 or 2 gigs where I did a bit of sequence stuff. But essentially I've come back and just played, done all my splits and just played the parts. And it's been great fun. But I also came into it, when I came back into it, it was I want to play because I enjoy the playing, not because I was playing Summer of '69 for the 5 millionth time, because that's how I was earning my living. You guys would probably relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of cover artists can, and interesting about how busy you've been throughout your career and continue to be. And I think one of the blessings of being a good keyboard player is you tend to be quite busy because they're in short supply compared to perhaps some other musicians around. But I think even by the standards of a keyboard player, Dave, you'd be one of the busiest keyboard players I know of. And I'm really interested on that basis, a question we ask all our guests: what are some of the key lessons you've learned over the journey that you would pass on to other keyboard players?
Look, I think that goes... the first one would be musicianship in general. Number one is listen. Listen to the band, listen to the groove, don't try and fill too many holes. Just find the pocket, sit in the pocket, and listen to where the band's going.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important thing, because it doesn't matter how good a player you are, how much a virtuoso you are. After 2 seconds of you showing the crowd that, they don't care. They just want to hear a great song and enjoy it and feel, feel the vibe that a band gives. And that's, when a band plays well, people get a good feeling. They dance around, they move around. They don't need somebody doodling with some sound or, tapping away or whatever it is. Just sit in the pocket, listen, groove, and when it's your time to shine, shine. That's probably the number one thing I can listen to the other players. And another one is I guess another generalized thing is, which some musicians don't get, is don't be a dick. Don't think that you're great. There's hundreds of players that are better than you. Just do your thing. Be nice to people when they come up and compliment you. Be nice to other players. Don't. You'll get on much further. It's really interesting. So seeing a lot of the, seeing a lot of the guys coming through when you back these major artists that have been around for years that we talked about. I would say 99% of the time, the guys who have been at the forefront of, being the superstar of the year, whatever year that may have been, if they're still around today, they're around today because they treat people well, they talk to you well, they treat their musos well. And most of the musicians who have been with that name band, who have done all those things and are now touring with other guys, those guys are not going to be dicks. They're going to be guys who can get along with other people, they'll help other people. They'll, you know, it may sound silly, but you know, you guys would have seen it. You'll have some guy come through who was in that band once, who had that record once, and he hasn't really done anything since, but he's still trying to trade on it. He's still trying to go, oh, it was this, and he thinks he's king shit, you know. And they're not, most of the best session guys around are just nice blokes, the kind of guys you'd like to hang out with.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. And Paul and I have often said we're yet to find a bastard, and I'm pleased to report you're not one of them either, Dave. So, but you mentioned being in the pocket, Dave. So I'm interested, when you fall out of the pocket, maybe fall on your head and break a limb or two, and that's our train wreck question. Have you got a nice technical train wreck you want to relay to us?
Oh, so I've been thinking about this. As I said to you guys earlier, I'm actually an avid listener, so I knew this question was coming up, and I was thinking about it. And so technically, you know, technically, I've always made sure that all of my stuff is always as bulletproof as possible. So we're talking, you know, when you put your sounds together in your keyboard, make sure if you accidentally hit that button or pull that pedal down or push that button, the other button, that all of a sudden a drum track doesn't start or an arpeggiator starts going. So you just want to lock everything down so that everything you can touch will not do anything to mess with what you're trying to achieve. Because that would be very easy to do. And if you're in a crowd, in front of a crowd of a few thousand people, that would be really embarrassing. So unfortunately, haven't really had any technical things go wrong. Now, I say this, but then on Friday, we played at Melbourne Casino. And I had one. And what it was we don't use, as I said, we don't use any backings or anything like that, but we do we do a song, Fleetwood Mac song, Stand Back, which has got a 16th note, digga, 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 digga. And so I actually gave the drummer a click, not to play to a sequence, but just to keep it in time with the arpeggiator. And it's been fine all the way through when we recorded it, when we rehearsed it. On Friday night, started to click, bang, we're into the song, and the arpeggiator's out. And so it's like 2 bars before I realised, no, it's not that. It's nothing else but the click is out of time with the arpeggiator. And so it's okay, that's coming off, and I'll find a sound and just do 16th notes from hand to hand. But besides that, I hadn't had any, you know, there's been a few things when I was really young. I've been programming my M1, and I had a big New Year's show, and the day before, it dropped its memory and I had no sounds. And that's the day I learned you need to back up everything you do, because I had no backup. So I spent, I don't think I would have sat that day, spent a whole day programming sounds for that.
They're two good stories, Dave. And I just think I've thought of one other thing that might get you to jump from the Kronos to its successor. One, that you can transport all your patches across. Number 2, that it'll boot up in, say, 10 seconds rather than 2 minutes in case you have an outage during.
Oh, yeah. Oh, look, that would be, you know, that would be awesome because, so the Kronos, being a computer, needs time to boot up. Because I've got extra EXIs and I've got my own sample library loading, I'm 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. So if I did lose power to my keyboard in the middle of the gig, there'd be a lot of silence. So my rig these days is the Kronos, and I'll either take or hire a second keyboard to be my controller keyboard. My ideal situation would be that my hire keyboard would be a second Kronos with all of my sounds loaded, ready to go. If my main keyboard went down, the show would go on. That would be my ideal situation. But then, Kronoses aren't cheap to hire, so we're not quite there yet.
No, exactly right. I remember having a Kronos's backline once, and the audio company that had organised the backline for us and set the thing up, the cable was taut as that into the power socket, and I said, you can't do that. We need some slack in that cable, because if this thing unplugs, like you said, we've got 3 minutes and nothing while I wait for it to boot up again. So yes, that's probably one of their few drawbacks. They're wonderful machines.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So Dave, we ask all our guests this: who would be a keyboard player that you would love to hear interviewed on this podcast? And it's great to learn that you're an avid listener. So yeah, who would be someone that you think, I'd love it if the guys could get hold of this person and interview them?
I know, Nik Kershaw.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah,
That is a good one.
Or going back to that Neuromix, Nick Rhodes. Be really interesting to hear them talk about. They were on the forefront of the synth thing, and the way they put that stuff together. You had on the other day, a couple of maybe 8 weeks ago, you had somebody, I can't remember his name, but he was talking about Nick Rhodes and how not to write him off as just a kid with the synth on an ironing board kind of thing.
Oh yeah, that might have been Jeff Downs, or it was someone. Yeah, I remember that conversation. Yeah.
Yes.
No, great pick, Nik Kershaw, and Nick Rhodes. We're trying, Dave. He's a hard man to get a hold of.
Yeah.
All right, and then the last one, Dave, that I know you've had a bit of a chance to think about, the old Desert Island Disc question. 5 albums you couldn't live without.
Yeah, so interesting. And I had I've been thinking about this, but I haven't actually sit down and go, okay, these would be my albums. There'd have to be my first is probably going to be a bit of left center, so it would actually be a Van Halen record, and probably, obviously 1984, it's got all of that great stuff on there, Jump and that, or I might even say 5150. I actually loved that.
Yes.
So I was a bit of a Van Halen tragic, really. Just love that stuff.
That is a great album. That is a great album.
Synths into the rock stuff. That's definitely one. Stevie Wonder, Some of the Key of Life, I guess. That would be another one. I would say David Bowie, Changes. That would have to make it. Now Prince. There's just so much to choose from. Some Prince. So I know it's not really a done thing, but he had a compilation greatest hits of the A sides, B sides, and just such great stuff in there. And then probably some George Benson. give me the night kind of thing, I would say. How is that? That's 4?
I think that's 4. Yeah, I think you've got 1 to go.
Yeah, look, I would say, and again, something completely, probably Thomas Dolby.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of it too. I know the one you mean. It'll be in the show notes, Dave. I'll make sure it looks.
I've just lost somebody ate my Buick or something. Is that
Alienate My Buick, or is that? Yeah. Anyway, the one with she blinded me with science. I'm assuming on it.
Yeah, it's got heart stuff. She's twice as massive. Yeah, there's some great stuff on there. You just out, love it.
Yeah, Dolby's on the hunt list too. Believe us, Dave.
Oh, that would be awesome. Now that would be cool. Yeah.
That's excellent. No, 5 great choices, and look, can't thank enough for taking the time, Dave. I said it's been quite a whirlwind the last few years, in particular for you. And I speak on behalf of many people, and you see this in the YouTube comments all the time. The difference you've made to a lot of people's lives through a hard couple of years, and you're quite rightly deserving some success as a result of it. So you look forward to seeing you go from strength to strength, and maybe when you playing live, we'll do a follow-up episode at some stage and catch up with you and do a rig tour. Can't beat a good rig tour.
Yeah, well, great. So we're obviously, we're going to be going around the country, and be great to catch up sometime.
And there we have it, Paul. Dave was everything I expected and more.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, and he was very generous with his thoughts and his time and explanation of his process. That's what I found really interesting as someone who. I think I mentioned it during the interview. He's one of the busiest keyboard players I know, and he has been forever. And we live in the same town, but I've never met the guy personally, although I've seen him play quite a lot, because he's just that busy. And if you're gigging and he's gigging, you don't bump into each other. He's just flat out all the time.
That's right.
It was a great interview, a lot of fun.
And I did forget to ask while we were recording what Dave's pick was for the songs that HSCC have played. What was his favourite? I did ask him after we stopped recording, and Owner of Lonely Heart by Yes. So that sort of fits with a lot of our recent guests we've interviewed. Would be his favourite. And Mr. and Mrs. Jones was the other one, wasn't it? That I think he mentioned. I feel really bad now if I've got that wrong. Yeah, no, Mr. and Mrs. Jones. So check out both those videos, says David, pretending that he knows who the band is that plays me and Mrs. Jones. Sorry, not Mr. and Mrs. Jones. So just check out both those videos as Dave's picks of his favourites. But yeah, huge thanks to Dave for taking part. That was a real pleasure. So we'll be back again in a fortnight or so. And just a reminder that we do love to hear from you. You can keep in touch via our website, which is www.keyboardchronicles.com. We're on Facebook as always at facebook.com/Keyboard Chronicles, or on Twitter at the Keyboard CHR1. And if you like good old fashioned email, then drop us a line at editor@keyboardchronicles.com. And as we talked about in the intro, if you want us to promo your band or solo act or whatever it is in a t-shirt, just contact us via those means. And then finally, if you'd like to become an official supporter, we do have a Patreon account where for the price of a coffee a month, you can help us go from strength to strength. And that's patreon.com/Keyboard Chronicles. And again, a huge thank you to our sponsors that we mentioned in the intro, and those that just support us in smaller ways via Patreon. Really appreciated. So Paul, thank you again. We'll catch up in a couple of weeks.
Can't wait. Thanks so much for, again, inviting me to be part of the wonderful juggernaut you've created, David, that is the Keyboard Chronicles.
Thank you. And most importantly, thanks to all of you out there for listening/watching, and we'll see you back here next episode.
Da, da, da.